Hey, hello again, and welcome to another version of Connect and Convert, the Sales Accelerator podcast. Hey, for all you small business owners who are looking to grow your sales faster than ever, you've got the right place, especially because my partner in crime, my business partner, and my podcast partner is here today. Say hello.
Hey, Dennis. Hey, everybody.
It's
Bigger,
Leah
faster,
Buckley.
stronger. That's the goal,
Bigger,
right?
faster, that bigger. Hey, you've got some good news for our audience, don't you? Why don't you
We
share
are
that with them?
loving what's going on with the discovery call, the free discovery call. We've started telling people you're going to see our email addresses. Get a hold of us. Yes, we will do individual questions, but this is an opportunity for you to book in a free hour with Dennis and I specific to your business. We're not saying that we're not going to take some of your great questions and use them on the podcast, but really we want to show you what it means to work with us, why it's important. And as always, the most important aspect of what we're doing is to make a difference and to help. Email us, let us know. You'll have both of us for an hour, and we're going to move things forward and see what's possible.
I like that. Move things forward. Speaking about moving things forward, I love the podcast where we have a guest.
Yes.
I love guests, and I particularly love this. And you, our audience, are going to love meeting this guy. I met him back in the radio days, my radio days in Miami, which spanned 30 years. And this dude was always there. I was telling a story before we got on live. I would always follow him into a national market, and we'd be meeting with a media buyer, my sales manager and I, and they said, "Oh, Gary Sarner was just here." And I said, "Yeah, okay. Is there anything left?" This guy was that kind of guy. His name is Gary Sarner. He is now the proud founder and owner of ROI 360 Plus, an interesting name. And we're going to get into what does that mean? How did that happen? Gary, we're friendly competitors for all those years. I'm so glad to have you on this podcast. Welcome. Thanks for taking the time.
First, thank you for having me, Dennis. Admired you for all of my years in radio in South Florida. And what I didn't get to say before we started to record, Leah, nice to meet you as well.
Good.
Dennis hired everybody in Miami but me.
How did that happen?
I failed one of those aptitude tests. Had to have been that.
Oh, you did end up at the stations I used to manage after I had already left. But again, that's a good story for the podcast about how that happened. So we're going to save that one. But I wanted to start off today. I heard you on one of your socials the other day tell a story that I was on the floor laughing. I was howling. I would love you to start today by telling that first sale ever. You were with Y100, which is an iconic, legendary radio station in South Florida, and you were going out on your first call. Take it from there. What happened?
Well, before I tell you the story about making the first sale, the first sale was really to David Ross. May he rest in peace.
Yeah, the general manager.
He was such a mentor to me.
Yes.
Your friend, Mark Hanoff, who is another mentor of mine, told me that when I asked him how I should get into radio, he told me, pick your favorite radio station, call, speak to the local sales manager. To make this long story short, I sat on the stoop of the radio station at 7:15 in the morning and got to meet this guy, Jim Knowles, the local sales manager.
Yeah, Jim Knowles.
Sure. Jim says to me, I think you're great. I don't make the final decision. You got to meet David Ross. I said, great. I'll wait in the lobby till he gets in. He doesn't come in till 11:30. I said, I'll be in the lobby. I'll have coffee.
I love
David comes in. He brings me back to his office. We're sitting, we're talking. And I told him about my dad's business, which was a big radio advertiser in Atlanta and South Florida and like 4 other markets across the Southeast. And in the middle of this interview, which was going nowhere, by the way, I was 20 years old. 20 years old. I said, David, can I ask you one personal question? He's sure. I said, do you invest in the stock market? He's like, of course I do. I said, listen, $3,000 in GES will make you a fortune or you'll lose the $3,000 in 90 days. He says, can you excuse me for a moment? Now I knew he was a gambler.
Ah,
And he
yeah.
left for 20 minutes. And he comes back into the office. There's no such stock as GES. I said, no, that's me. I want $1,000 a month for 90 days. I'll prove my worth. You'll make a lot of money. He says,
I
start
love
tomorrow.
that.
What a great story.
So I start at the radio station. Jim Knowles takes me to the back of the sales pit, doesn't introduce me to a soul. And he tells me to put my fingers together and my arms down to my knees. And he starts stacking phone books.
That's your
So
account
I got
list.
9. And back then you had a Dade and a Broward phone book.
I remember. Yeah. Yeah.
I think I had 9. I could barely move. We get to the desk and he takes out the Dade phone book and he opens it to see. And it says the last 9 people that sat here didn't make it this far. Start here. I do what I do. I start dialing the phone.
Dialing for dollars. That's how we used to do it.
And I get this guy named Rich on the phone at Computer Village. And I tell him I'm going to be down in the Dadeland area the next day. Is it okay if I pop in to see him? I don't know what the hell to do. I've got nothing to do in Dadeland. Who the hell wants to drive to Dadeland? But it mirrored my dad's company's name, Stereo Village, Computer Village.
Right.
I can at least speak this guy's language because I can't speak radio language at all.
Understood.
Day 2. I drive down there. I meet with this guy, Rich. We go around. We're looking at Commodore computers, some of the first Apple computers, and I couldn't even tell you the other brands. And I said, look, my father built his business on the radio from 1 store to 60 stores across the Southeast. And he sold it. I said, if you do radio, you will win. Long story short, he writes me a check for $10,000 for 100 commercials.
Really?
He doesn't ask me a lot of questions.
He just wrote you a check.
Wrote me a check.
He trusted you right away.
Wow.
Very few,
language.
but back then it was much easier. And I show up at the radio station and I am jacked up. I got an envelope with a check made out to Y100 for $10,000. And I sit down in Jim's office and he's, what's going on? I'm like, here. He's, what is that? I said, open it. He says, a $10,000 check. I said, yeah. Computer Village, they're going to be on the radio station. Where are the spots going to go? I said, on the radio station. He says, no, where? I said, I have no clue. You haven't even said a word to me since I started.
I love that story. I don't know.
I don't know.
Where did they go? Who trafficked the spots? Who did the sales manager figure it out?
Jim put a schedule together where I'm sure, unfortunately, I shouldn't use this word, but this guy got raped. Who knows? I couldn't even tell you today. I'm going to throw a name at you who taught me how to do agency business. Carolyn Wasserstrom.
Oh, my.
Schwartz and Noonan Advertising.
Yep.
Nobody wanted to call on her. She taught me everything there was.
Wow.
An Arbitron book.
Yeah.
Because Jason Jennings' videos didn't do the job.
Jason Jennings. Boy, there's one. We all had Jason at one time, didn't we? So but I got to know, you got to tell me the rest of the story. Did this $10,000 investment pay off for this guy?
No.
Oh, no.
It was a one and done. And you want to know something? You probably saw it all too often, and Leah, you as well. The amount of new clients that come onto any broadcast station, radio or TV, and fail. And
Yeah.
with you now being with the Wizard of Ads, you've learned something quite different than what you preached, or Leah, what you have preached. It's different when you're not working for a broadcaster and you are out there doing what is right for the client.
Yeah.
And
Getting past the churn. You're getting past the churn of just having to bring those checks in an envelope in and
right.
concentrating on the business, concentrating on making a difference. How do we move it forward? Which is a big thing Dennis and I always talk about. Finding out what is unique about the business, what's in it for me as a potential client of that business, and shouting it, either radio, TV, online. Gentlemen, we've seen the marketing world change for our clients, for our
Slightly.
potential clients.
Yeah.
And it's making sure that we keep that at the forefront, not just feeding the machine.
But Gary, I think what you do and what all Wizard of Ads partners talk about, we are trained to do it by the wizard himself. Please always advertise up front the chickening out period. And I think you do that well. What's the chickening out period? That occurs about 6 or 7 months into the engagement, where you have the engagement, you have put a media plan together, you put a strategy together, you put copy together, and 6 months they say, hey, it ain't working. It ain't working. And Roy's point is, and the point we all believe in, no, it's not going to just yet. Hold on. I think you get that. I think you've been lauded for that by a guy up, who was it? The Clear Channel, not Clear Channel. iHeart. Yeah.
Bernie Weiss, president of iHeart New York.
Right. He congratulated you on that.
And Gary, you also would have seen the success of your dad, because he grew to, what did you say, 60 stores?
Yep.
And he did it on the back of radio. He used radio properly. He had to have, otherwise it wouldn't have worked.
He also had the ability to run double trucks every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Wow.
So we're talking hardcore sales. We're talking get in here. This is werewolf style. I'm yelling at you, and there's something going on. Come.
Listen, so the stories, and I got to stay straight on this one because I lost my dad a few years ago. But do you remember the turntables? And you had a plug-in cartridge that went into the arm.
Of course, yeah. Leah's too young to remember that. I remember.
So my father went to a cartridge company in Brooklyn called Grado. And he made a cartridge in a box. He designed the circular tube the way he wanted the cartridge in it. And it was called the LS Larry Sarner 39. He was 39 years old at the time. Plug-in P.
Huh.
And he put a price tag of $350 on the cartridge. It cost him $7.
Ooh.
Hang on. He would advertise the turntable for 1 penny if you bought the cartridge at half price.
Wow.
So the turntable cost 60. Look at the margins. Look at the margins that they had.
He gets it.
He got it. Look, he taught me a lot. One day he walked into his stores and he raised every item's price by 88 cents. Everything.
88 cents. Why 88 cents? What was the magic of that?
Nobody would ever dare to complain about 88
Oh,
cents.
I see. Okay. It was unnoticeable.
But the multiple thousands of sales that they made every month equated to millions of dollars.
Of course.
Millions and millions of dollars. So I learned, fortunately, from the best, which, back to Computer Village, gave me the ability to speak somebody's own language versus having to speak about something that I didn't know a thing about other than I love Sonny Fox.
Sonny Fox.
Okay, but here's the thing now, Gary. You can talk radio. I'm selling radio up in Canada. You and I could sit for a day and we could banter back and forth, and it would, Dennis can be listening in, and we'll all three know what we're talking about. But even though you specialize and you love radio, and that's evident, you have a heart on for radio, there is no question that you're not dealing with electronic stores anymore. You've specialized differently. And I want to talk about that because I am very intrigued by where your specialty is at ROI 360.
So about 12 years ago, I had just started at Lincoln Financial.
By the way, that's my old company. Yeah.
Okay.
Dennis's old company, where he didn't hire me. Jeff Dinitz did.
Yeah.
Jeff left 3 days after I got hired.
That's another podcast.
That wasn't because you got hired, by the way.
No.
There were other reasons for that.
Yes. But by the way, in his defense, anybody who replaced you, it was the second one that was going to succeed. It was never going to be the first one.
It was the rebound, right? The first one was the rebound.
Look, Dennis.
It's a long story.
But Dennis had such a reputation in the Miami radio market, and he had a staff that would have broken down every wall for him. I worked with the people. I watched it. I sold against them. I watched it. Whoever followed was going to unfortunately fail.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
so I'm now at Lincoln Financial, and there's a lawyer who is screaming at his rep about spots being bumped. And Dennis, if you could remember the building, the add-on for the $7.90, the ticket sales stuff.
I added that on. Yeah.
Where everybody was thrown.
Yep. That's where the $7.90 went. Yeah. Right.
You could have heard it at Power 96 across the street.
Right.
And I walked into my manager at the time and I said, look, I don't know this guy. I know his family. Give him to me. I'll give you something else. And I ended up in a coat and tie, shine shoes, going to a lawyer's office. And I walk in, this guy's in flip-flops, jeans, and a t-shirt. I'm like, what the hell? Make a long story short, he had a stack of invoices behind him on his credenza. And anybody who is in radio in the sales side can read upside down.
Yeah.
I knew what they were.
Of course.
And I said, do you look at those? My people love me. They take care of me. Now, how crude can we go on this podcast?
We got Boomer. He'll be about anything.
Yeah, go ahead.
I said to him, and sorry, Leah, I said, you like to take it up the ass without lube. What do you know about my business? I said, dude, you are getting screwed every which way from China. If you don't look at what you're buying and see what you're getting on the back end. He's, okay, smartass, why don't you audit one of my stations for me? No, I audited a TV station, and 54% of what he thought he purchased ran wrong. It was ugly.
I hate that.
Yeah.
I became his media guy on the spot, which is something I had never done.
So when you say media guy, you were working with other stations.
All of a sudden, I'm checking his spot times every day for him,
right,
on TV and the two radio stations.
TV and radio. Okay.
Eventually, it became into buying, coming up with plans. And 12 years later, he's a statewide juggernaut in Florida. Sure, you see or hear him all the time, Anajar and Levine.
All the time. They're everywhere.
And I'm very grateful for him and his trust he had in me.
Sure.
Because I got to learn something that I never learned working inside the radio stations.
Wow.
Is that other radio stations are just as important as the ones that I worked at.
Interesting.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And what I say now when I speak to my potential partners, and I call all of our clients partners. They are not clients.
Right.
I don't have clients. But for the purpose of the podcast, we're going to call them clients. But I don't speak about one group. You need to own something, whether it's radio, whether it's TV, whether it's billboards. If you don't own it or own a segment, you've got nothing.
Interesting. Wow.
Nothing. Because when you look at a Morgan and Morgan in the legal world, there's not a firm in America that can outspend Morgan and Morgan.
They're everywhere, aren't they?
And by the way, their creative is incredible.
Okay, that's where I wanted to go next, because you're talking very specifically about what's going on with placement. Because here you audited his ads, you found places where, those sales reps, and they were sales reps, would have hated you. They weren't consultants, they were sales reps, because you're coming back to them going, I need make goods, and you can double those up. But then his share of voice was all about, as you said, the creative. How do you properly represent who they are? And Dennis and I were talking a little bit about this. In Canada, it's been very recent that lawyers have even had the ability to advertise in traditional media. And you get one of two things. You get the guy screaming at you, or you get more of a branding type of message. What's your view on that, Gary?
Which one is Diamond and Diamond?
I'm not familiar with that one.
They're big out of Toronto, Montreal. I don't know if they've gone across.
They haven't
the country
gone
yet.
Western then. I'm Western Canada, and we're behind where you would find Eastern Canada.
You have to be who you are as an advertiser. It's not for any one of the three of us to tell somebody how they should be. There are screamers that are very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, you are turning off a lot of the public. Then there are the branders who want to tell the story and educate the consumer. That's a far slower play than the screamer. You got to decide who you want to be and what you want the general public to perceive. I have another story.
Okay, before you do, I just want to say I'm normally the bad guy at this point and reference our sponsorship from Wizard Academy, wizardacademy.org, because it's all about creative and it's all about how businesses, lawyers included, might present themselves. But Dennis, I'm calling it. We're going to keep going. This is too much to just stop and try and put a pin in this. We're going to carry on. And
yeah,
I want to know more about your synopsis here, Gary, of the not telling people who to be when it comes to their creative.
So I went to a conference in San Diego for traumatic brain injuries. 1,800 lawyers at this conference. And they invited me to speak at the marketing track. There were 12 people in the room. No mic needed. And this gentleman comes up to me after and he's, this is all really interesting to me. I have a 50-year-old law firm that I took over from my father. We are knee deep in digital marketing and bottom of the funnel. But we're trial lawyers don't advertise. I said, okay, who told you that? He's like, look around the country. You see all these mills advertising, spending millions and millions of dollars, and people aren't being treated right. And I'm not going to name any names, but he says, there are these 4 firms in my market that spend millions a month, and they're getting all these great cases. I said, awesome. Are they trial lawyers? He's, no, they refer some cases to me. I said, okay. I said, have you ever invited the public to do business with you? I told you I don't advertise. I said, that's why they're calling them. It's plain and simple. Invite people to do business with you. Now, creatively, Leah, getting him to the place where he was comfortable was hard because he was embarrassed that he was going to be advertising.
Is it because he thought that meant people would think he wasn't successful? He had to advertise?
He was more worried about the law firms that don't advertise and bring him the big stuff, and the judges that have used him for their family issues when it came to motor vehicle accidents or anything bad that was of personal injury nature. And the first 90 days might have been the most painful 90 days ever for him, for me. His underwear was brown every day. The investment he made was large because we own that market. Own it. Own it. Every station we're on. And heavy.
And you held his hand through the whole thing.
I did everything but change his underwear.
Your full service agency. Yes. I love it.
But after 4 months, he called me and I want to add another market. I said, slow down.
Oh.
I said, slow down. I said, I sense that you had a great month last month, but let's not let it be an anomaly. Let's duplicate this. Let's get 4, 5, 6, 7. Then we'll look at another market.
Okay, so how different is that than if you were working directly for the radio station?
Oh my God, I would have hit him up. Buy the next station. Buy the next station. Because that's where I was going before. When we started, and Leah, I don't know where you started, but we worked at one radio station.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then with mergers and acquisitions, all of a sudden we had 2, we had 3, we had 6, maybe 7.
Yeah.
And now you sell this cluster of crap to somebody. So if I was working at the sports station and somebody was targeting men 25 to 54 years old as their primary customer, I would have been better suited to have that client long-term at the radio station by bringing him to a partner at an iHeart, at a Lincoln, at any of the other groups, to where he had 4 like stations and owned it. I didn't learn that until I started doing it for Anajar and Levine and saying, okay, I'm not beholden to anybody here.
Yeah.
We're going to spend this money the right way.
Yeah.
Not
that's interesting.
Based upon what I've been tasked to sell.
Yeah.
But what you're referring to is that silo mentality that we had, that here, this is the silo. And even when we just had one station, we expanded to 2, 3, 4, whatever, we still had that silo. Oh no, you're not getting any of mine. That's mine. And yet it was counterproductive. I love what you said earlier. You realized you had to do what was right for the client. You had to do what was right for them. Duh. Shouldn't we all be doing that?
But I don't think anybody was trained the proper way back when we were young bucks in the business. And then as you had clusters and then you had digital products, you got a bunch of people who loved radio selling digital that didn't know how to fucking work a phone.
Producer Paul here. Hope you enjoyed that about 30-minute conversation with Gary Sarner, our good friend from ROI 360 Plus. Now, this was a total of a 1-hour conversation between Dennis Lee and Gary, so we decided to split it up into half. So that was just part 1. Part 2 is coming up in the next episode of Connect and Convert, where he talks more about his business ownership, team building, and some personal insights into business ownership and team building. Hope you stay tuned, and we will see you next week on Connect and Convert.